The sound came from deep underground like nothing Kang Dae-ho had ever heard before. It was high and sharp, cutting through the steady hum of mining equipment and the thick walls of his workshop. He stopped working on the broken drill and listened carefully. There it was again, a crying sound that made his chest feel tight. Dae-ho wiped his hands on his work clothes and walked outside. The mining colony stretched across the rocky surface of Kepler 442b, a planet so far from Earth that the sun looked like just another star in the black sky. Rows of metal buildings housed workers from dozens of different alien species. Humans were the smallest group here, brought in mainly to fix machines that other species found too complicated. The crying sound came again, weaker this time but still clear. Dae-ho looked around to see if anyone else had noticed. Near the main mining shaft, a group of Veltari workers were loading ore containers. Their long blue arms moved quickly, and their 4 eyes never looked up from their work. They showed no sign of hearing anything unusual. A crystalline architect floated past, its body made of living glass that caught the light from the work lamps. The being moved silently, focused only on checking the structural supports of the mining tunnels. It too seemed unaware of the sounds. Dae-ho had been working on mining colonies for 8 years. He knew that different species heard different things. What sounded like music to a plasma weaver might be painful noise to a human. But this sound felt different. It felt like someone was in trouble. He grabbed his equipment scanner and followed the sound toward the old mining sector. This area had been abandoned 3 months ago after a tunnel collapse. The company decided it was too expensive to clear the debris and moved operations to a new site. Now it sat empty, with warning signs telling everyone to stay away. The crying sound grew louder as Dae-ho approached the collapsed area. His scanner showed unusual readings underneath the rubble. There were pockets of air down there and something was moving, something alive. Commander Thexval appeared beside him with the quick, jerky movements typical of Veltari species. The tall alien's 4 eyes focused on Dae-ho with obvious annoyance. "Human Dae-ho, why are you not in your assigned work area?" Thexval asked. His voice came through a translator device that made all his words sound flat and emotionless. "I heard something under the collapsed tunnel," Dae-ho replied. "Something that sounds like it needs help." Thexval's eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion among his people. The geological survey team detected no life signs in this area. The collapse was complete. Nothing could survive beneath the debris. But I can hear crying. Something is alive down there. Human auditory systems are known to create phantom sounds under stress. Return to your workshop immediately. The mining schedule cannot be delayed by imaginary noises. The commander turned to leave, but Dae-ho did not follow. The crying sound came again, and this time it seemed to be calling for help. Not in words that Dae-ho could understand, but in a way that went straight to his heart. "With respect, Commander, I would like to investigate further. It will not interfere with the mining schedule." Thexval's neck stretched upward, another sign of irritation. Human curiosity is inefficient. Time spent on impossible rescue missions is time wasted. However, if you insist on this foolishness, do it on your own time, and do not request additional resources. The commander walked away, his long legs carrying him quickly back toward the active mining area. Dae-ho was alone with the crying sounds and his growing certainty that someone down there needed help. He went back to his workshop and gathered tools. A portable excavation unit, some repair drones, air quality monitors, and his emergency medical kit. The other human workers had gone to lunch, so nobody asked questions about what he was doing. The work was harder than Dae-ho expected. The tunnel collapse had created a solid wall of rocks, metal supports, and crushed equipment. His excavation unit could only move small amounts at a time. The repair drones helped by clearing debris, but progress was slow. After 2 hours of digging, the crying sounds became clearer. There were multiple voices down there, all young-sounding and frightened. Dae-ho's scanner showed that he was getting close to the air pockets. Whatever was trapped below had been there for a long time. Other workers passed by during the afternoon. Most ignored him completely. A few stopped to watch for a moment before moving on. None offered to help. This was not unusual in the mining colony. Everyone had their own jobs to do, and helping others was seen as a waste of time and energy. As evening approached, Dae-ho finally broke through. His drill hit empty space, and a rush of warm air came up from below. The air smelled strange, like burning metal mixed with something sweet. More importantly, the crying sounds were now clear and loud. He lowered a camera drone into the hole and watched the images on his scanner screen. What he saw made him forget to breathe. The cavern below was natural, formed by ancient water flow through the rock. But it was not empty. Scattered across the floor were pieces of what looked like a spacecraft. The metal was unlike anything Deho had seen before, twisted and blackened by heat. And moving among the wreckage were 3 small creatures. They were unlike any species in the colonial database. Each one was about the size of a large dog, but their bodies were covered in scales that caught the light from his camera drone. They had wings, though these appeared to be damaged. Their heads were long and elegant, with large eyes that seemed to glow with their own light. The creatures noticed the camera drone immediately. They moved toward it with obvious hope, making sounds that were clearly attempts to communicate. One of them tried to fly but fell back to the cavern floor. Its wing was badly burned. Deho realized what he was looking at. These were babies, young ones who had been trapped in this cavern for who knows how long. They were hurt, scared, and completely alone. The spacecraft wreckage suggested that their parents had been with them once, but there was no sign of adult creatures anywhere. The crying sounds continued, but now Deho understood what they meant. The baby creatures were calling for help, for rescue, for someone to take away their pain and fear. They had been calling for a long time, but nobody had come. Nobody except a human mechanic who could not ignore the sound of suffering. Deho stared at the screen showing the 3 baby creatures in the cavern below. His hands shook as he realized the size of the problem. The hole he had dug was barely wide enough for his camera drone. Getting down to the creatures would require much more work, and he had no idea how badly they were hurt. The babies kept looking up at his drone, making soft crying sounds that pulled at his heart. One of them, smaller than the others, tried to climb toward the camera but slipped and fell back down. Its scales were blackened with burn marks and dark liquid dripped from wounds on its side. Deho made his decision quickly. He activated his emergency communicator and called the 2 humans he trusted most on the colony. "Lee Soman here," came the voice of the colony's human medic. She sounded tired after a long day treating injured miners. "Soman, I need your help. Can you come to the old mining sector immediately? Bring all your medical supplies." There was a pause. "Deho, what kind of injuries are we talking about? Human Veltari crystalline? Something else. Something new. Just please come quickly." His second call was to Park Jun-woo, the human security chief for their section of the colony. Jun-woo had served in the Terran Defense Forces before taking this job, and Deho knew he could be trusted to keep secrets. "Jun-woo, I found something that nobody else can know about. Can you come to the abandoned mining area and bring crowd barriers?" "How much trouble are we talking about?" Jun-woo asked. "The kind that could change everything." Both humans arrived within 20 minutes. Somin carried her full medical kit, while Jun-woo brought portable barriers and his security scanner. They looked at the hole Deho had dug and then at the images on his screen. "What are those things?" Somin whispered. "I do not know," Deho replied. "But they are babies. They are hurt, and they have been trapped down there for a long time." Jun-woo studied the scanner readings. "The cavern is stable. Air quality is acceptable. But getting down there will not be easy." "We have to try," Deho said. "Listen to them." The crying sounds drifted up from below. Somin knelt beside the hole and listened carefully. Her medical training had taught her to recognize signs of pain and distress in many different species. "They are definitely in pain," she said. "Burns, possibly broken bones. And they sound very young. We need to get them out of there." Jun-woo set up his barriers around the worksite while Deho expanded the hole. The excavation unit worked faster now that he knew exactly where to dig. Somin prepared her medical supplies and studied the images from the drone camera. "Their body structure is unlike anything in the medical database," she said. "But the basic principles should be the same. Stop bleeding, treat burns, stabilize injuries." As the hole grew wider, the babies below became more excited. They gathered directly underneath, looking up with hope in their large, bright eyes. One of them made a sound that was almost like singing. "They know we are trying to help," Deho said. When the opening was finally large enough, Deho lowered a rope ladder into the cavern. The babies moved back to give him space, showing an intelligence that surprised all 3 humans. "I will go down first," Deho said. "Somin, lower medical supplies after me. Jun-woo, keep watch." The climb down was difficult. The rope ladder swayed, and the smell from the cavern was stronger now. Burned metal, yes, but also something else. Something that reminded Deho of old stories and ancient legends. His feet touched the cavern floor. and immediately the three babies surrounded him. They did not attack or threaten. Instead, they pressed close to him, making soft sounds that felt like grateful crying. The smallest one rubbed its head against his leg like a cat seeking comfort. "It is okay," Deho said softly. "We are here to help." Up close, he could see how beautiful they were despite their injuries. Their scales shifted color in the light, from deep blue to silver to gold. Their wings, though damaged, showed delicate patterns like stained glass, and their eyes held an intelligence that was clearly more than animal. Somin's medical kit came down on a rope, followed by Somin herself. She moved slowly and carefully, not wanting to frighten the babies. But they seemed to understand that she was there to help. The largest baby, despite obvious pain, moved aside to let her examine the smallest one. "The burns are serious but not fatal," Somin said as she worked. "These healing patches should help. And this one has a broken rib, but it is not puncturing anything important." As she treated their injuries, the babies remained calm and cooperative. They seemed to understand that the medicine would help them heal. The smallest one even tried to help by holding still while Somin bandaged its wing. "They are smart," Junwoo observed from above. "Very smart." Deho explored the cavern while Somin worked. The spacecraft wreckage told a sad story. It had crashed here long ago, probably decades. The adult creatures had clearly fought to protect their young, but they had not survived. Burn marks on the cavern walls suggested weapons fire, not an accident. In the wreckage, he found something that made his blood run cold. A piece of metal with markings he recognized. Galactic hegemony military codes. This had not been a crash. It had been an attack. "Somin, how long do you think these babies have been alone?" She looked up from bandaging the middle-sized baby. "Based on their development and the healing of old injuries, I would guess months. Maybe longer. They have been surviving on mineral deposits and cave water. Their parents? Dead for a long time." The babies seemed to sense the sadness in the humans' voices. The largest one, despite its injuries, moved to Deho and made a sound that was clearly meant to be comforting. It was trying to make him feel better. "We cannot leave them here," Deho said. "Agreed," Somin replied. "But we also cannot let anyone else know about them." Junwoo's voice came from above. "Why not?" Deho held up the piece of wreckage with hegemony markings. "Because whoever killed their parents might come back to finish the job." The three humans looked at each other, understanding the weight of what they had found. These babies were not just injured animals. They were survivors of something terrible, and now they were depending on human kindness to stay alive. "We take them to my workshop," Deho decided. "It is private, and I can modify it to keep them safe." The babies seemed to approve of this plan. As the humans prepared to lift them out of the cavern, the smallest one nuzzled Deho's hand and made a sound like a purr. For the first time since their rescue began, it sounded happy. They had found each other, three species that everyone said were enemies or impossible. But in this moment, they were just beings who cared about each other's safety and well-being. 3 weeks had passed since the rescue, and Deho's workshop had become something completely different. What once was a simple repair facility now housed 3 growing baby dragons who had transformed not just the space, but the lives of everyone who cared for them. Deho had named them based on their personalities. Biol, the smallest one with silver scales, was curious about everything and seemed to disappear through solid walls when excited. Hanul, the medium-sized one with blue scales, could somehow make the air feel thick or thin around him. Barum, the largest with golden scales, seemed to affect gravity itself, making tools float when he was happy. The dragons had doubled in size since their rescue. Somin said their growth rate was incredible, but they remained gentle and playful. They followed the humans around like loyal pets, but their intelligence was clearly far beyond any animal. Choi Woo-jin arrived on the morning supply transport from Earth. He was a xenobiologist, officially here to study the local mineral formations. Unofficially, he was Deho's old friend from university, someone who could be trusted with impossible secrets. "You have got to be kidding me," Woo-jin said when he saw the dragons playing in the workshop. Biol was phasing in and out of a metal cabinet while Hanul and Barum watched with what looked like laughter. "We need to know what they are," Deho explained. "And more importantly, we need to know how to keep them safe." Woo-jin spent the next few days running every test he could without hurting the dragons. They cooperated completely, seeming to understand that the tests would help. His findings were extraordinary. "These are Drachmori," he announced during a secret meeting in the workshop. "I thought they were legends, but the genetic markers are unmistakable." "What are Drachmori?" Somin asked. According to ancient records, they were a species that could form deep mental connections with other beings. They could sense emotions, share thoughts, even transfer abilities. Most galactic civilizations worshipped them as gods thousands of years ago. What happened to them? Junwoo wanted to know. Wu Jin's expression grew dark. They were hunted to extinction by the galactic hegemony about 200 years ago. The official reason was that they were dangerous. The real reason was that they could sense lies and corruption through their empathic abilities. The hegemony could not control populations that had Drachmori protecting them. This explained the hegemony markings in the crashed ship. The dragon's parents had been refugees, probably the last of their kind, trying to find a safe place to raise their young. But why do they respond so well to humans? Somin asked. Other species on the colony barely noticed them, but they seem to love being around us. Wu Jin had been studying this exact question. Human neural patterns are unique. Most species have very rigid thought structures or completely chaotic ones. Humans have the right balance of emotion and logic. You can connect with Drachmori in ways other species cannot. To prove his point, he brought a Veltari engineer to the workshop under the pretense of checking equipment. The engineer looked directly at the dragons several times but showed no interest. To him, they might as well have been unusual pets. But when Kim Hye-jin, a human engineer, came to help modify the workshop, the dragons immediately welcomed her. Biol showed off his phasing ability, Hanul made pretty patterns in the air by changing pressure, and Baram lifted her tools for her using gravity control. They are trying to communicate, Hye-jin realized. Not with words, but with feelings. She was right. When Daeho focused on his connection with the dragons, he could sense their emotions. Biol felt playful and mischievous. Hanul was thoughtful and protective. Baram was confident and strong. But underneath all of their individual personalities was the same deep feeling, gratitude and love for the humans who had saved them. The bond worked both ways. When Somin was tired after long medical shifts, spending time with the dragons seemed to restore her energy. When Junwoo was stressed about security reports, Baram would somehow make him feel calmer just by being nearby. And when Daeho worked on complicated repairs, Biol would often appear beside him, and suddenly the solutions would seem obvious. They are sharing their abilities with us, Wu Jin observed. This is what the ancient texts described. Drachmori and their bonded partners become stronger together. The workshop modifications were nearly complete. Hye-jin had installed better ventilation, soundproofing, and a hidden entrance that only the humans knew about. The dragons had their own sleeping area, play space, and even a small pool for bathing. But as the dragons grew larger and stronger, hiding them became more difficult. Their abilities were developing rapidly. Biol could now phase other objects along with himself. Hanul could create small storms inside sealed containers. Baram could make things weightlessly float across the entire workshop. During one particularly exciting play session, Baram accidentally made a 2-ton mining drill float up to the ceiling. It took all 3 humans working together to convince him to put it down gently. "We have a problem," Junwoo said after that incident. "They are getting too powerful to hide much longer." "And too big," Somin added. "Biol is already the size of a small horse." But the biggest problem was not the dragon's size or abilities. It was the change in the humans themselves. Daeho found he could sometimes walk through walls when he was focused on reaching the dragons quickly. Somin discovered she could sense when people were lying about their injuries. Junwoo realized he could make his security rounds faster by somehow reducing his own weight. "The bond is permanent," Wu Jin explained. "Once formed, it cannot be broken. You are becoming something new, something the galaxy has not seen for centuries." "Is that dangerous?" Daeho asked. "Only if the wrong people find out." As if summoned by those words, alarms began blaring across the colony. Emergency lights flashed, and the communication system crackled to life with Commander Thexaval's voice. "All personnel report to assigned stations immediately. Hegemony fleet detected approaching the system. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. The dragons sensed the humans' fear and moved closer to them. Biol phased partially into the wall, ready to hide. Hanil made the air pressure drop, showing his anxiety. Barum lifted all 3 humans slightly off the ground in a protective gesture. They know, Somin whispered. Daeho felt the truth of it through his bond with the dragons. Somehow, the hegemony had discovered that Drakmori had survived. They were coming to finish what they had started centuries ago. But this time, the dragons were not alone. This time, they had humans who would stand with them, who would fight to protect the innocent lives they had sworn to defend. The bond between human and dragon was about to be tested by fire. The warning alarms had been screaming for 3 hours when the first hegemony ships appeared in the sky above. Kepler 442b. Daeho watched from his workshop window as 12 massive warships descended through the atmosphere like metal thunderclouds. Each ship was bigger than the entire mining colony, covered in weapons that could destroy a planet. The largest ship landed in the center of the colony's main plaza. Its hull was black as space, decorated with symbols that made Daeho's stomach turn cold. These were kill marks, one for every world the hegemony had conquered or destroyed. Inside the hidden chamber, the 3 dragons pressed close together. Through his bond with Biol, Daeho felt their terror. They remembered these ships. They remembered what had happened to their parents. Stay hidden, Daeho whispered to the wall that concealed them. No matter what happens, stay hidden. Commander Thexaval's voice echoed through the colony's speakers, shaking with fear. All personnel report to the main assembly area immediately. Comply with all hegemony orders. Resistance will result in termination. Daeho found Somin, Junwoo, Woojin, and Haijin already waiting outside his workshop. None of them spoke, but their faces showed the same determination. Whatever happened, they would protect the dragons. The walk to the assembly area felt like a funeral march. Hundreds of colonists moved in silence through the streets, while hegemony soldiers watched from every corner. The soldiers were mantids, standing 8 feet tall in black armor that made them look like walking nightmares. Their multifaceted eyes tracked every movement, and their mandibles clicked with anticipation. The main assembly dome was packed with frightened beings from dozens of species. Veltari workers stood next to crystalline architects, while plasma weavers floated nervously near the ceiling. Everyone knew the hegemony's reputation for violence. A section of the dome's floor opened and a platform rose up, carrying the most terrifying figure Daeho had ever seen. Admiral Kexthun was enormous even by Mantid standards, his black armor covered in scratches and burn marks from 100 battles. Most frightening were his eyes, which held no mercy or compassion, only cold calculation. Citizens of this mining facility. The Admiral's voice boomed through the dome without any electronic amplification. I am Admiral Kexthun of the 1st Hegemony Fleet. You are now under military occupation. Nervous. Whispers rippled through the crowd, until the Admiral raised one clawed hand for silence. We have detected energy signatures consistent with Drakmori presence on this world. These creatures are ancient enemies of galactic peace and must be eliminated immediately. Most of the colonists looked confused. Drakmori were legends, stories told to children about magical dragons from long ago, but a few of the older beings shifted uncomfortably, remembering tales their grandparents had told. The penalty for harboring or protecting Drakmori is death, the Admiral continued. However, those who provide information leading to their capture will receive substantial rewards. Daeho felt sick. The dragons were just babies who had never hurt anyone. But to this creature, they were nothing more than targets to be eliminated. Furthermore, Admiral Kexthun announced, our historical records show that this colony was built near the crash site of the last known Drakmori vessel. Recent excavation in that area suggests someone has discovered survivors. Several colonists turned to look at Daeho. He had made no secret of his digging in the abandoned mining sector. But none of them spoke up. Fear of the hegemony kept them silent. The Admiral gestured to his soldiers. Begin systematic search protocols. Scan every structure, every tunnel, every storage facility. The Drakmori are here and they will be found. As the crowd began to disperse, Admiral Kexthun stepped down from his platform and walked directly toward Daeho. The other humans instinctively moved closer together, but the Admiral ignored them and focused entirely on the mechanic. You are the human designated Kang Daeho, the Admiral stated. Records show you conducted unauthorized excavation in the restricted crash site area. I was looking for salvageable materials, Deho replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Our sensors detected that you accessed a natural cavern system beneath the wreckage. That cavern contained Drakmori nest chambers. Where are the survivors? The Admiral's multifaceted eyes seemed to look straight through Deho. Up close, the mantid was even more terrifying, with mandibles that could easily cut a human in half. The cavern was empty except for old debris. Deho lied. Interesting. Admiral Kexthun tilted his head in a gesture that would have seemed curious if not for the menace in his voice. I have been hunting Drakmori for 137 years. I know their scent, their energy patterns, their emotional resonance, and I can sense them on you. Before Deho could respond, the Admiral turned and began walking toward the workshop area. His soldiers fell into formation around him while the humans followed at a distance, their hearts pounding with fear. The workshop looked normal from the outside, just another repair facility among dozens scattered throughout the colony. But Admiral Kexthun paused at the entrance, his head tilted as if listening to something only he could hear. Yes, he said softly. They are here. The soldiers spread out through the workshop while the Admiral examined everything with scientific precision. His clawed fingers traced over workbenches and equipment, searching for any sign of the dragons. The Drakmori were not always enemies of civilization, the Admiral said conversationally while his troops searched. Long ago, they were revered as wise beings who could bring peace between hostile species. But peace is not profitable. Peace does not require the services of a vast military organization. One of the soldiers approached the wall where the secret chamber was hidden. His scanner showed increasing energy readings as he moved closer to the concealed panel. When the Drakmori began exposing corruption in hegemony leadership, when they started helping oppressed populations resist our control, they became a threat that required elimination. The soldier's scanner began beeping rapidly as it detected the hidden room behind the wall. The final breeding pair escaped our assault 20 years ago. We tracked them to this system, destroyed their ship, and believed we had ended their species forever. But apparently some humans decided to interfere. With galactic justice, the soldier found the hidden panel and began working to open it while Admiral Kexthun watched with satisfaction. Drakmori form powerful emotional bonds with other species. If there are survivors here, they will not allow innocent beings to die for their sake. They will surrender themselves to save you. The panel opened, revealing the secret chamber, but it was completely empty. Admiral Kexthun's mandibles clicked with frustration as he examined the hidden room. It was clearly designed to house something large with feeding areas, sleeping spaces, and even a small pool. But whatever had lived there was gone. Where are they? The Admiral demanded. Through his bond with the dragons, Deho suddenly understood. Bile had used his phasing ability to take all three of them into the solid rock beneath the workshop. They were hiding inside the planet itself, beyond the reach of any scanner or sensor. I told you the cavern was empty, Deho said with more confidence now. The Admiral studied the empty chamber, then looked back at Deho with obvious suspicion. You constructed this hiding place for something. My instruments detect strong Drakmori emotional resonance throughout this building. Maybe your instruments need calibration, Junwoo suggested. Admiral Kexthun moved faster than anything that large should be able to move. His armored hand struck Junwoo across the face, sending the security chief flying into a wall. So-min immediately ran to help him while the other humans stared at the Admiral with growing anger. I do not make mistakes, humans, the Admiral said coldly. The Drakmori are here. I can feel their presence like a wound in the fabric of space itself. He turned to address all the humans directly. You have 1 hour to produce the Drakmori. If they are not surrendered by then, I will begin executing colonists randomly, starting with your species. The Admiral paused at the workshop door and looked back with what might have been amusement. Drakmori cannot bear to see innocents suffer for their sake. When they hear the screams of dying humans, they will emerge from whatever hole they are hiding in. After the hegemony forces left, the humans sat in stunned silence. Through the walls, they could feel the dragon's distress. The babies understood enough to know that people would die because of them. We cannot let him start killing people, So-min said while treating Junwoo's broken nose. And we cannot give up the dragons, Deho replied firmly. Then what do we do? Hyejin asked. Before anyone could answer, new alarms began sounding throughout the colony. But these were different from the hegemony warnings. These came from the colony's own defense sensors. Through the workshop window, they could see new ships dropping out of hyperspace. ships with human markings, responding to the emergency messages Yang Mi-young had managed to send. Before the hegemony blockade was established, the human resistance had come to Kepler 442b, but Admiral Kexthun was not concerned about a few cargo ships and mining vessels. His fleet could destroy them easily. What worried him was the energy readings his sensors were detecting from deep space. Something else was coming. Something his computers could not identify. In the rock beneath the workshop, 3 baby dragons felt the approach of their own kind. Adult Drakmori, awakening from centuries of hiding, drawn by the news that their children had found protectors who would fight for them. The final battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. The first human ships arrived just as Admiral Kexthun's deadline approached. Captain Han Yujin's converted cargo vessel led a ragtag fleet of mining ships, research vessels, and independent traders. None of them were designed for war, but they came anyway when they heard about the baby dragons and the humans protecting them. All human personnel on Kepler 442b. This is the Resistance Fleet. Captain Han's voice crackled over the emergency channels. We received Yang Mi-young's message about the Drakmori children. We are here to help. Admiral Kexthun watched the approaching ships with amusement. His flagship alone could destroy half the human fleet, and his battle cruisers could handle the rest easily. But he was curious about why so many humans would risk their lives for creatures they had never seen. This is Admiral Kexthun of the Hegemony First Fleet. He broadcast to all ships. You are interfering with a lawful extermination operation. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. Captain Han's response was immediate. The only thing that needs to be destroyed here is your willingness to murder children. Drakmori are not children, human. They are living weapons capable of controlling minds and reshaping reality itself. They must be eliminated for galactic security. Then why are you so afraid of 3 babies? In his workshop, Daeho felt the dragons stirring beneath the rock where they hid. Through their bond, he sensed their growing distress. They could feel the emotions of everyone in the system, human and alien alike. They knew their existence was causing this conflict. Yal phased up through the floor first, his silver scales dim with sadness. Hanul and Baram followed, all 3 dragons showing deep distress at the violence happening because of them. We should go to the bad creatures. Bial communicated through their emotional bond. Stop the fighting. Stop the dying. No, Daeho said firmly, kneeling to look into the dragon's large, bright eyes. You are not responsible for their hatred and fear. But people will die because we exist, Hanul added, his blue scales flickering with anxiety. People die fighting for what is right, Somin explained gently as she checked Junwoo's injuries from the Admiral's attack. That is different from dying because you exist. No one chooses to be born, but everyone can choose to protect the innocent. The dragons did not fully understand the distinction, but they trusted their human friends completely. If the humans said fighting was necessary, then they would help fight. We are stronger when we work together, Baram said, touching Daeho's hand with one careful claw. Share strength like before, but more. Daeho understood what the dragon was offering. The casual ability sharing they had experienced during play and work could be intentionally enhanced. The dragons wanted to form true combat bonds, something that would permanently change all of them. It will be dangerous, Woojin warned, reading from his research notes on ancient Drakmori texts. Permanent bonding creates something entirely new. You might not be fully human anymore. I stopped being fully human the moment I decided these babies mattered more than my own safety. Daeho replied without hesitation. So, Min, Junwoo, and Heejin looked at each other, then nodded their agreement. They had all made the same choice already in their hearts. We do this together, So Min said, placing her hand on Hanul's neck. The bonding process was unlike anything any of them had imagined. As each dragon touched their chosen human partner, energy flowed between them like liquid starlight. Daeho felt his awareness expanding far beyond his own thoughts and memories, encompassing Bial's experiences and perspectives. Through Bial, he gained the ability to phase through solid matter at will, but it was more than just a physical power. He could understand the spaces between things, the hidden connections that held the universe together. So Min, bonding with Hanul, found herself able to control atmospheric pressure and weather patterns. But more importantly, she could sense the emotional climate around her, feeling the fear and hope of everyone nearby. Junwoo's bond with Baram gave him control over gravity fields and force shields. The power came with an understanding of how everything in the universe pulls on everything else, how all things are connected by invisible forces. Hye-jin's bond was different. Instead of connecting to just one dragon, she found herself linked to all three through her human partners. She became a coordinator, able to direct their combined abilities like a conductor guiding an orchestra. But the dragons gained something equally valuable. Human creativity flowed into their ancient minds. Human determination strengthened their gentle hearts. Most importantly, human hope replaced the despair they had carried since their parents' death. Outside the workshop, the space battle had begun. Admiral Kexthun grew tired of waiting and ordered his fleet to open fire on the human ships. The first energy blasts destroyed 2 cargo vessels and badly damaged 3 others. Captain Han's ship returned fire with mining lasers and improvised weapons, but the damage to the hegemony fleet was minimal. All ships scatter and regroup, he ordered. We need to buy time for the people on the surface, but time was running out. Hegemony dropships were already landing throughout the colony, deploying squads of mantid soldiers to begin the systematic execution of colonists. That changed when the bonded humans and dragons emerged from the workshop. Dae-ho, merged with Biol's phasing ability, walked through the walls of hegemony landing craft and disabled their weapons from inside. Soldiers fired at him, but their energy blasts passed harmlessly through his phased form while he sabotaged their equipment. So men, working with Hunwell's weather control, created localized storms that grounded enemy aircraft and disrupted their sensors. Sudden fog banks hid fleeing colonists while lightning strikes disabled hegemony communication arrays. Junwoo and Baram generated gravity wells that pulled hegemony troops off their feet and sent their armored vehicles spinning helplessly through the air. Enemy soldiers found their weapons too heavy to lift or so light they floated away uselessly. But it was Hye-jin who coordinated the most devastating attacks. Working with all 3 dragons simultaneously through the human bonds, she turned the colony itself into a weapon. Earth and rock flowed like water around her commands, swallowing enemy positions. Metal structures bent and twisted to trap hegemony soldiers in cages of their own. Equipment Admiral Kexthun watched from his flagship as his ground forces were systematically defeated by what appeared to be impossible magic. His soldiers reported fighting enemies who could walk through walls, control the weather, and manipulate gravity itself. This cannot be happening. He clicked his mandibles in frustration. The Drakmori are too young for such advanced abilities, but his science officer had studied the energy readings carefully. Admiral, these are not pure Drakmori powers. The readings suggest a fusion of Drakmori abilities with human neural patterns. Impossible. Humans are too primitive for true bonding. Nevertheless, Admiral, the evidence is clear. The humans and Drakmori have achieved an integration level that our records show has never occurred before. Admiral Kexthun felt something he had not experienced in over a century of conquest. Genuine uncertainty. His mission was to eliminate the Drakmori threat. But his enemies were no longer just Drakmori. They were something new, something his strategies and weapons were not designed to handle. In space, the tide of battle was shifting as well. More human ships continued arriving, bringing news that changed everything. Yang Mi-young's emergency broadcasts had done more than summon human reinforcements. They had awakened something that had been sleeping for centuries. Captain Han's sensors detected massive new contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. But these were not human ships or additional hegemony reinforcements. These were adult Drakmori vessels, ships that seemed to be made of living crystal and flowing metal. Ancient beings who had been hiding throughout the galaxy for centuries, waiting for a sign that it was safe to emerge from their concealment. The message about dragon children being protected by humans had been that sign. Dozens of Drakmori ships appeared, then hundreds. Each one carried not just ancient dragons but representatives of species that had remained loyal to them during the long years of hiding. Species that had suffered under hegemony rule and dreamed of freedom. Admiral Kexthun found his overwhelming fleet suddenly outnumbered by an alliance he had believed extinct. "This is impossible," he transmitted to his command staff, his voice shaking for the first time in decades. The Drakmori were eliminated. "Our records are complete and accurate." The response came from the lead Drakmori vessel, a ship so large it seemed less like a spacecraft and more like a flying mountain. The voice that reached every mind in the system was ancient, powerful and filled with gentle sadness that somehow made it more terrifying than any threat. Your records were wrong, Admiral Kexthun. We have been waiting, watching, hoping to find a species worthy of true partnership. Today, humanity proved their worth by choosing compassion over fear. Part 6, The New Dawn. The battle for Kepler 442b ended not with explosions and death, but with a choice that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Admiral Kexthun stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His mighty fleet, which had conquered dozens of star systems, was completely surrounded. Adult Drakmori ships moved through space like living poems, their hulls shifting between solid metal and flowing energy. Human vessels, patched together but never giving up, held formation alongside their new allies. From every direction came ships carrying species he thought had been extinct or subdued. The Admiral's computers calculated his chances of victory. The numbers were not encouraging. "Admiral," his science officer reported with barely controlled panic, "we are detecting new bond formations throughout the enemy fleet. Humans and Drakmori are linking at an exponential rate." It was true. As word spread through the human fleet about the successful bonding on the planet below, volunteers stepped forward on every ship. Drakmori, who had spent centuries alone, finally found partners who could share their deepest thoughts without fear or judgment. Each new bond made both species stronger. Human innovation combined with ancient Drakmori wisdom to create possibilities neither could achieve alone. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Deho stood with Biol in the main plaza and watched the sky fill with wonders. Ships that looked like flying cathedrals moved alongside converted mining equipment. Beings that had once been myths worked beside humans who still smelled of engine oil and honest sweat. "Is the fighting over?" Somin asked. Through her bond with Hanul, she could feel the emotions of everyone in the star system. The fear and anger of battle were fading, replaced by something she had never experienced on such a massive scale. Hope. "Not over," Biol replied through their shared thoughts. Beginning. The largest Drakmori ship positioned itself directly in front of Admiral Kexthun's flagship. It was ancient beyond measure, its living hull scarred by centuries of hiding and survival. When it spoke, the voice reached every mind in the system, not through radio waves but through direct contact with their thoughts. "Admiral Kexthun," the elder Drakmori said, and there was no anger in the voice, only infinite sadness. "You have hunted us across the galaxy for over 2 centuries. You have destroyed our homes, killed our children, and forced us into the darkest corners of space. We would know why. The empathic contact made lying impossible." Admiral Kexthun could only speak the truth even though it condemned him. "Because you were a threat to hegemony control," he admitted. "Your empathic abilities made it impossible to maintain the fear and division that keeps our empire stable. Populations protected by Drakmori could not be controlled through lies and oppression." "And now?" The Admiral looked at his displays, showing the combined human and Drakmori fleet. Thousands of ships, millions of beings, all connected by bonds of respect and care rather than fear and domination. "Now the threat has become reality," he said quietly. "You have found partners who share your ideals and multiply your abilities. The hegemony as it exists cannot survive contact with this alliance." "That is correct," the elder Drakmori agreed. "But the hegemony as it could become might find a place in the galaxy we are building together." The offer of redemption rather than destruction caught the Admiral completely off guard. Through the empathic link, he felt the complete sincerity of the proposal. These beings truly wanted peace, not revenge. "What would you require of us?" he asked. "Nothing but honesty. No surrender, no tribute, no punishment for past crimes. Only a willingness to try building something better than what came before. Help us create a galaxy where different species work together instead of destroying each other." Admiral Kexthun considered this for a long moment. His entire career had been built on the assumption that conflict was natural, that only strength could maintain order. But the evidence before him suggested something entirely different. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were working together. Humans and Drakmori had formed bonds that made both stronger. Even his own crew was watching the Allied fleet with curiosity rather than hatred. Behind him, his bridge officers waited for orders. Some wanted to fight to the death rather than surrender. Others looked at the peaceful fleet surrounding them and wondered if there might be another way. "I need time to consider your offer," the Admiral finally said. "Time you have," the elder assured him, But understand this. The children you came here to destroy have already changed everything. Their rescue by humans has awakened something that cannot be put back to sleep. 3 days later, Admiral Kexthun made his choice. His message was broadcast throughout the system and transmitted to hegemony command centers across the galaxy. "I have seen the future," he announced, "and it does not belong to empires built on fear and hatred. Effective immediately, I am resigning my commission and requesting sanctuary with the Human Drakmori Alliance." Not all of his fleet followed his decision. Nearly half chose to return to hegemony space, unwilling to abandon the only system they had ever known. But those who stayed carried with them knowledge that would reshape military doctrine throughout the galaxy. The transformation had begun. On Kepler 442b, the mining colony had become something unprecedented. A true meeting place for dozens of species working together as equals. The workshop that had once hidden 3 frightened babies was now expanded into a proper sanctuary where human children played alongside young dragons, while their parents planned the future. Hard to believe. It all started with crying sounds from underground. Junwoo observed as he watched the integrated playground. "Not hard to believe at all," Somin corrected him. "This is what humans do. We hear someone in trouble and we help. Everything else followed naturally from that choice." Wu Jin had been documenting the bond formations for future generations. "The genetic changes are permanent and beneficial," he reported. "Bonded humans are developing enhanced lifespans to match their dragon partners. The dragons are gaining human adaptability and creative thinking. Within a few generations, we might be looking at an entirely new form of intelligent life." "Good," Heijin said simply. "Maybe we can do better than either species managed alone." Yang Mi-young approached with communication reports from across the galaxy. "The Alliance is spreading faster than we can track," she announced excitedly. "Human colonies throughout known space are reporting Drakmori emergence. Species we never knew existed are sending messages of support and friendship." "How is the hegemony responding?" Daeho asked. "Mixed reactions everywhere. Some sectors are preparing for war. Others are asking for peace negotiations. Several entire systems have declared independence and joined our alliance. The transition would not be easy. The galaxy had been shaped by centuries of fear and control, and change would bring both wonderful opportunities and serious challenges. But for the first time in living memory, there was genuine hope for something better." As the weeks passed, more colonies requested alliance protection. Trade agreements were signed between species that had never spoken to each other before. Most importantly, children of different species began growing up together. Learning that cooperation was stronger than conflict, Nam Tae-hyun, the former colony administrator, now served as the first human Drakmori diplomatic coordinator. His reports painted a picture of rapid but peaceful change spreading throughout the outer territories. The hegemony still controlled the core worlds, but their grip was weakening as more systems chose freedom over fear. In his expanded sanctuary, Daeho sat with Biol and watched another spectacular sunset paint the sky in colors that seemed more beautiful than ever before. The dragon had grown to the size of a small building, but still came to his human partner when seeking comfort or companionship. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Daeho asked, remembering that first moment when he heard crying from underground. Biol's response came as a flood of shared memory. The terror of being alone and injured, the miracle of rescue, the joy of finding family, and the hope stretching out toward a future bright with possibility. "We chose love over fear," the dragon said finally. "That is always right." Above them, human ships and Drakmori vessels continued their joint patrols, protecting not just one world but the promise of what the galaxy could become. A place where crying children would never be ignored, where different species could build together instead of tearing each other apart, and where the sound of someone in need would always find helpers willing to answer. The new dawn had truly begun, started by one human mechanic who could not walk away from the sound of suffering,